Hey there! In this video, let's take a quick look at whether it's a good or a bad idea to use models in application code in database migrations. Let's get started. First of all, what do I mean by application code? In Laravel, the application code is found inside the app folder. There we have controllers, services, repositories, models, and more. Basically, they are the ones that tell your app how to work. Now, what are database migrations? In Laravel, the database migrations can be found under the database folder. Migrations are a set of instructions that define the changes you want to make to your database schema. Do you want to create or drop a table, add or remove columns, or just migrate data from a table to another table? Then you should create a migration. Now, coming back to the question of whether it's a good or bad idea to use models and application code in database migrations. A first clue is given to us by the structure of a Laravel project. The app and migrations folders are separate. If the migrations folder had been under app, then that would have suggested to us that migrations depend on the business logic. But that's not the case. Laravel follows a rule, namely that migrations should be independent of the application's code and its state. Let's see a very simplified example. Here I am using customers factory to create 3 customers with a pending status. And I'm using the constant from the customers model. Let's run PHP artisan migrate fresh to recreate the database. The migration ran, and we also have the customers in the database. But what if, let's say, 5 years from now, we don't use this status anymore, and it was removed from the model? I'm just gonna comment this out. And also, imagine that this migration is among the hundreds of migrations in the project, and the IDE does not recognize that the constant no longer exists. And you will so run the migration once again. And of course, we get an error saying that the constant status pending cannot be found. Well, this is a quick example of why we should not use application code in migrations. In this case, we should just use a plain string. Let's rerun the migrations. Let's take another example. I don't have a code to demonstrate this, but I'll ask you to picture the following scenario. Say migration 1 creates a table. Migration 2 appends the table. But at this point, the model has been updated to reflect the migration 2. But it's used by migration 1. So when migration 1 is called, the model will break, because the migration 2 has not yet happened. So that means you can be certain of the state of the database, but you cannot be certain of the state of the code. Instead of using Eloquent Models, you can use either the query builder or the native SQL using DB statement. Now you could say, yeah, but we can also change the old migrations to reflect the state of the model. Well, while this is technically possible, that means you will alter the structure of the database versioning and you will lose the ability to get back to an older version of the database. So that's why the golden rule is that once the migration has been migrated, its code should not be modified. If you want to make other database changes, they must be done within a new migration. So those were some of the disadvantages of using models and application code in migrations. But what would be the advantage of using Eloquent models in migrations? Well, quite simply, it's easier to write queries by having access to the full suite of methods and functions that Eloquent provides. But from my point of view, I avoid using models in migrations. But some may argue that doing so saves time, but with the risk of potentially causing issues with the migrations in the future. But hey, I'd love to hear your opinion too. Leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the next one.